Black is beautiful. So say some firearms collectors like me. This is by no means the extent of my collection. I've got plenty of hunting rifles and shotguns and things that your granddaddy might have carried around. But these right here are the subject of a big controversy, because these have the capability of holding a lot of rounds. Now, none of these are a machine gun. I know that there's going to be people that will look at these and say, oh, that's a machine gun. I recognize this. This is an AR-15. It's a fully automatic. No, it's not. You pull the trigger once and one bullet comes out. The difference between this and a lot of other rifles that are not semi-automatic is you have 30 rounds right there. So you can fire rapidly. This is another AR. It looks even scarier than that one. Again, 30 rounds. Now this one fires a 30 caliber bullet instead of the common 223, or what NATO labels the 5.56 round. So this is a short barrel rifle, registered with the United States government, as a matter of fact. Why? Because that barrel is less than 16 inches. This barrel is 16 inches, as is this barrel right here. Now, a lot of people also recognize this. This is the shape, the dastardly shape of an AK. A lot of people would mistakenly call this an AK-47. It's not. It's an AK-74. It fires a smaller caliber, high-speed round. Lastly here, this is an Israeli firearm. It is also of the AK operating system, although put together a heck of a lot nicer than just about any AK I've ever seen. In fact, is put together nicer than any AK I've ever seen. This fires a 308, which is a hunting round. It's a big bullet. It can go a long ways and carry a lot of energy with it. All of these are scary looking guns, according to some. But what they are is semi-automatic firearms. And these firearms right here have never harmed a soul. They have shot paper and steel plates. And that's it. That's it. I know some guys that will hunt coyotes with a firearm like this. You can hunt deer. Obviously, this big fella right here with the 308, that's a deer round all day. You can just see right there. It's a big round. Okay, but everybody's getting most excited about this thing right here. And that's the AR-15. Unfortunately, this has been the weapon of choice for some high-profile school shootings and other what are characterized as mass murders, when a bunch of people are killed at one time. The question becomes, should civilians be able to own firearms like this? Well, today I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to talk about the misnomers and some of the, for lack of a better word, propaganda that's out there. Anyone who's into firearms is going to look at any one of these on the table and go, wow, super, super cool. Anybody who's not and is emotionally affected by seeing the scenes of people getting hurt is going to say, why does anybody need that? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the word need as well. This is Dr. Drake 63 taking a look at some black rifles. Stay tuned. Okay, well, first up, the point of this being scary looking is something that's gonna affect people emotionally in different ways. There are people that the sight of a 9mm pistol, something like a Glock, on a law enforcement officer's hip holstered, is upsetting to them. because guns frighten them. And you know what? Firearms in the wrong hands should frighten you. A drunk behind the wheel of a car should frighten you. But are you frightened of the car? No, you're frightened of the drunk. What I find interesting is people talk about the concept of, why do I need this rifle? And the truth of the matter is need has nothing to do with it. I have the right to own it. I often ask the question, why do people need to smoke cigarettes? Because cigarettes kill 500,000 or more people around the world every year. I've heard the number to be in the millions. Most people can't name the lobby that keeps cigarettes legal and keeps the production of cigarettes legal in this country, but they can name the NRA because that organization has been unfortunately demonized. Most people can't name the lobby that keeps alcohol legal. And just like cigarettes, if these were products that were introduced by the makers of them today and they had to go through an FDA test, the truth of the matter is they would not pass and not be allowed for public consumption. So what we're really talking about here is a situation where they already are in existence, so they're legal. Now, here's a touchy subject. Wherever you stand on the concept of abortion, the fact of the matter is it results in the termination of a human life. If you want to call it a fetus, if you want to call it something else, you can, but it is a human life at the moment of conception. I'll go to my grave arguing that concept. Does anybody know the name of the lobby that keeps that legal? Well, it's a matter of convenience, so it's legal. I'll tell you something though. Abortions, cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol, none of these things are specifically mentioned in our Bill of Rights as being a right. These are all things that are allowed legally. The right to bear and keep firearms was specifically mentioned by the framers of our Constitution. They felt strongly about it because they'd been occupied by the British for a number of years. They'd been pushed around, in some cases murdered and controlled, because the Brits were a heavily armed occupation force. So where does that leave us? Well, do we have the same arms? If I can legally own this, can I protect myself against a wayward United States government that has helicopters, drones, and all these other things? Individually, no. But as a group of millions of people that own these, the idea of just imposing your will, kicking down our doors, and going to some kind of totalitarian state is a hard pill to swallow, because that would mean that there's going to be a lot of bloodshed. It's not the only reason that I have the right to have this. I have the right to keep and bear arms for any number of reasons, for sporting purposes, you name it. Unfortunately, we live in a world where self-defense is a real, not imagined, need for many people. All you have to do is turn on the news every day, and you see examples where people are doing evil things to other people. And guess what? If you take away my right to protect myself, whether it's with this, whether it's with a 9mm handgun like a Glock, 1911, 45 caliber, whatever, a shotgun, you start taking my right to keep these things away. And the only people that are going to still have them, yes, you guessed it, are going to be the criminals. Unfortunately, there's evil in this country. There's organizations that are even coming out calling for violence. Antifa's one of them. And I've seen a lot of evidence that Black Lives Matter is willing to join that crowd as well. And yes, there's white supremacist groups, skinheads, people that would do harm to others given the opportunity. I'm not in favor of doing violence to anybody. And to be honest with you, if I believed for a second that me turning in my firearms was going to have an impact on violence done to other people in this country, I'd strongly consider it, but I know better. I'm a realist, and reality dictates that we live in a dangerous world, we live in a dangerous society. You don't need to look any farther than to ISIS. You don't need to look any further to Al Qaeda to realize that we as Americans, just because we're Americans, are targets. And people have no compunction whatsoever about hurting us, about hurting women, about hurting children, you name it. If they could systemically destroy all of us, they would. And the point is they can't. Part of that reason is because anybody who wants to come in this country and start something like that is going to be facing something like this. Okay. Now, I am a big believer that firearms need to be kept out of the hands of dangerous people. And if there's any disagreement between myself and some of the other folks and even the NRA, which I strongly support, if there's any disagreement at all, it tends to be in the area of background checks. But beware of the background check because it introduces a slippery slope. If all your neighbor has to do is not like you and say, hey, I'm worried about this guy, I think he's going to do something, and that's all the grounds that's necessary to get into your private business and take away your rights to bear and keep arms, I think we could see a lot of abuse. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about people that have strong anti-firearms positions being in a position such as your doctor who decides, you know what, this guy shouldn't own a firearm, I'm going to report him. Those kind of things are scary. But I guess at some point you have to wonder, where do we err to the side of caution? And a perfect example is this Florida shooter who was reported to the FBI. They checked him out, and the fact of the matter is the guy hadn't really broken any laws, or if he did, I don't know what they were. The FBI certainly didn't think so, and so they didn't act on it. Well, I think if someone who wants to go on record on YouTube or Facebook or anywhere else and make comments that indicate that they want to do violence, personally, I think their right to bear and keep a firearm ought to be immediately taken away. And I'm sorry if that involves some dumb, loudmouth young guy that decides to get into an argument with somebody else and he loses his firearms rights for the rest of his life. Might make people think twice, and it might actually make people start behaving decently towards each other on the internet. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, we have regulations. We probably have plenty of regulations. The biggest issue that's going on out there is that we have a proliferation of firearms in this country. Some believe the number's as high as 350 to 400 million. So they're never all going to get turned in, no matter what law you make. The only people that are going to keep them, in most cases, are going to be the bad guys. And if they know that they can kick your door down without having to worry about getting shot, guess what's going to happen? That's right, you're going to see crime go up. Violent crime has gone down significantly since concealed carry legislation began to show up in states a number of years ago. I'm not going to show you this graph or that graph. Go look at the FBI's crime statistics. That's all you need to see. It's all right there for you to see. What's unfortunate is when the wrong people get a hold of something like this, that bad things can happen. And what do? They go after soft targets. They go places where there's a sign that says no firearms allowed. Think about it for a minute. Do you think a criminal for 1 second is going to not go kill people because he's worried about breaking the law that says you can't take a firearm someplace like a school? I don't. They're willing to commit murder. I'm willing to bet you they're willing to commit every other kind of crime that goes along with it, including not taking a gun into a no firearm zone. Soft targets are where these people attack. I'm not an advocate that says everybody ought to be armed. I'm not an advocate that says the teachers ought to be armed. Heck, there's way too many teachers I've had that I wouldn't want to see a gun in their hands. I think they'd be more dangerous than a lot of school shooters. The truth of the matter is this: if someone wants to have that level of protection, they should. If we care enough about our courts, our government buildings, and other places like banks enough to post armed guards in strategic locations, why wouldn't we do it at our schools? Maybe pull a couple of cops off of the radar trap down the street and put them in the school standing on their feet. Yeah, you might have a little bit more speeding, but you're going to have less school shootings. And that's what this is all about. Innocent people being hurt by firearms is a horrendous tragedy. As a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, anyone who wants to accuse me of being insensitive to that is not only absolutely wrong, but they're completely wrong. In other words, they don't know what they're talking about. We live in a society where name-calling, labeling, and brandishing people with insults has become commonplace. We're a divided nation, and it concerns me to a great degree. When I see the kind of violence people are willing to do, when I see the kinds of things that people are willing to do to each other, the last thing I'm willing to do is give up my ability to protect myself and my family. This is Dr. Drake 63, thanking you for listening to me on my soapbox today. You're either going to agree with me or you're going to disagree with me, but the point is we're all entitled to an opinion in this country. The reason for that is the First Amendment, and the reason that the First Amendment exists is because of the Second Amendment. Think about that. This is Dr. Drake signing off. Have a great day.